Hi everyone, I'm Martin, the creator of Travel Sleep, and welcome back to a new community transmission. It certainly has been a while since I last updated you on the game and everything surrounding it, so it's really nice to have you back and let you know everything that's been happening with Travel Sleep. Now, I do want to apologize for delaying this video a bit. I wanted to experiment with the style and format of these videos, so I kinda kept rewriting the script for this one. On top of that, there were a few things that were still developing and changing, so I kinda wanted to wait a bit for them to settle, so I could know for sure if I could talk about them in this video. Although a few things have become more clear, some still haven't, so it'll take a bit more time to figure them out. You'll know what I mean once we get into the video. So without further ado, let's see what we have in the new community transmission. So the first big news that I'd like to share is that at the start of April, I finished writing the Night 6 draft script, which means that pretty much the entire script for Try to Fall Asleep has been written. At this point, Night 6 only needs a few small adjustments and shortening. The reason why this is so significant is because the main dialogue script kind of represents the whole story and lore of the game on a very fundamental level, and it tells exactly what's gonna happen in the last two nights as you play them. Figuring out all the details and intricacies and then writing it down in the script with natural sounding sentences took quite a bit of thinking, and it's because you have to think from the perspectives of each character and look at the story as a whole as well. It all needs to make sense, it has to be interesting and make you feel stuff too. Now that the main draft for the 6th night has been written, the main bulk of the writing has been finally finished. What's kinda ironic is that I thought that writing the end would be the easiest part to write, because all I'd need to do is tie together all those loose ends and bring everything together in one neat, satisfying package. But as I started to write last night, I began to realize how super intricate the ending really is. I really don't want to give anything away to potentially spoil something, but I do want to say that the last two nights have a lot of subtleties and intricacies that makes the ending so much more intriguing and impactful, leaving the player satisfied and well versed in the story, and at the same time preserving some ambiguity. It was a bit of a challenge to balance all these things, but despite that, I'm very pleased with how it all turned out in the end. But is it gonna be good or bad? Well, ultimately it's gonna be up to you to decide when you complete the whole game. But as the creator of this whole thing, I do think it's important to say that I'm very proud and confident of what I've written. As complex and mind-bending as it may be, it's gonna be a lot of fun bringing it all to life, and I can't wait to get the full game in your hands as soon as I can. Since the last time we spoke, we've made some decent progress with the 5th night and have already begun planning out this final 6th night. For the 5th night, all the dialogues have been written, so once we finalize the script for the last 6th night, we'll be ready to do some voiceover recording. All the levels and scenes for night 5 have been grade boxed, and some are even more than 50 to 70% finished. Another good news is that we just planned out the final fundamental gameplay for the 5th night, and we're already developing it in the level. Just like before, gameplay wise, the last two nights will be completely different from the other nights. And of course, just like AB mentioned in the 4th night, for the last two nights John will be falling asleep in a brand new location, a rehabilitation center. Although everything is still in a very early development stage, I still really wanted to put something together and give you a small teaser for what's to come in the future. So I hope you enjoy this little tease. The big thing we're currently trying to figure out is whether or not we need a publisher. On one hand, so far, we've been managing everything by ourselves just fine. That includes funding, developing, and publishing. But on the other hand, a good publisher could significantly help us with the development by providing us with some additional funding, helping us to reduce development time by bringing more people on board, and most importantly, help us launch the game on more platforms and consoles. We want to get the game to as many people as possible, but unfortunately at the moment we don't have the funds nor the knowledge to fully realize that. Yes, there are tutorials and guides on how to publish for consoles, but figuring it all out would still require a significant amount of time. Anyways, I don't want to spend too much time on this for now, as it's still a developing topic, but once we're ready we'll share more news about this eventually. So, when can we expect the full release? To be completely honest, at the moment it's a bit too hard to predict how things are gonna play out. So unfortunately we're not ready to give a rough estimate on the release of the full game just yet. Big factor is whether or not we'll be able to find a good publisher to work with. And that of course could significantly change how things are gonna play out for the rest of the development. So once things will become more clear, we hope to let you know as soon as we can. In our last community transmission, we mentioned that there will be a new 0.4.2 update in the first quarter of this year, which would bring key rebinding and more options in the settings menu. But now that we've gained some pretty good momentum with the last two nights, we want to keep up that momentum and continue working on the last two nights. So unfortunately we'll need to indefinitely delay the 0.4.2 update. It already took a bit too much time to release the previous 0.4.1 update, so we hope you agree that working on the last two nights should be a bigger priority. So that's about all the major news we want to share with you in this CT. Now let's answer a few questions that people have submitted to us on Twitter and our Discord server. This time we don't have that many, but regardless, it'll be still fun to answer them. And here we have a wonderful array of questions from Zidane, sorry if I mispronounced that. I really want to know what's the difficulties you guys encountered. TTFA kinda took a time to reach this point. Well yeah, I mean, good games take a while to make. When I started working on TTFA, I had zero knowledge about any game development whatsoever. And in the early days, a lot of my time was spent on researching, learning, and watching YouTube tutorials on how to script, work with the Unity editor, and learn all the basics of fun game mechanics. Even though when we want to implement a cool new feature or try something different, it often requires us to spend some time on researching and making sure we can actually pull it off. I think for us as a whole, the biggest difficulty is to find the time to work on a game, because many of us are studying or working, and unfortunately we're not at a point where we could do this full time. But for me, since I do a lot of everything myself, managing everything and spending equal amounts of time on developing, writing, communication, publishing, bookkeeping, etc., not to mention uni, it can be a bit overwhelming at times, but honestly, I've gotten used to it by now. Is TTFA lore getting another game that explains the lore more and the characters, pasts, etc.? There still will be a significant amount of lore coming with the last two nights for TTFA, so I'd say we should wait until the full game comes out. And then let's see where we can go from there. I think after finishing TTFA with more context and a better understanding of everything, people are gonna start to find a lot of cool connections and details throughout the game that would have seemed insignificant and random at first. We also have a cool idea to revisit the second dream and add an interesting element to flesh out the characters a bit more. So rest assured, the full release will quench your thirst for more lore. Are you planning on making any new games in the future? Yes. Although I don't have a comment on sequels or prequels for the current game, I sure don't want to stop at TTFA. I feel like I found a really cool passion in making awesome games, and it would be a dream come true to make this a full-time gig, which could also sustain us. Despite game development being a bit tough at times, I've still been having a lot of fun making TTFA, and I still have many other cool ideas that I'd love to bring to life someday. Is the game lore inspired from a true story, like a light novel, novels in general, or a movie? Since the game's story and lore is pure fiction, it's not based on any true stories. But when it comes to the game's lore, if there is any influence, I'd say it comes from the Portal series. I've always been inspired by the environmental storytelling in those games, and the way the lore is handled in those games is brilliant and quite remarkable. It's not intrusive nor obnoxious, yet it fits so well with the rest of the game environment, and it makes the whole game feel a lot more realistic and immersive. So that example really inspired me and helped me to improve my own game lore as well. Big Chunky asks, when did the development on the project start? Some of the very early, and I mean super early builds of the game were published on EDDB around 2015. Our first proper beta with actual gameplay was released around 2018. And in 2019 we released the early access. And we finally reached the end of this CT. Thank you very much for stopping by and spending some time with us. By the way, please don't worry if we might get a bit too radio silent in the future. We'll be really focusing on the last 2 nights in the upcoming months, and we want to take our time and be careful when announcing dates or news. That said though, if you find any new bugs or if you have any other feedback or recommendations for a game, feel free to share them in our game's Steam discussion page. And once we'll have more news to share, be sure to follow this channel and our official Twitter account to stay up to date. Alright folks, we wish you a good night, and we hope to talk to you once again in the next CT. Yes, there are tutorials and guides on how to publish for consoles, but figuring it out but figuring it all out would still require a significant amount of time.